my name is Sam Morton from Microsoft New Zealand, and today I'm going to cover a little bit of an update of technology in the education industry. We're also going to cover Windows 10 and the latest devices for education. We're going to run a quick demo, and then we're also going to dive into some of the resources that are available for you as partners. So I hope you enjoy. So the influence of technology in the classroom is arguably greater than ever, and it's really exciting to see particularly New Zealand schools adopt this at quite a rapid rate. We're seeing cloud adoption in New Zealand schools be almost greater than any other industry or country in terms of actually working in the cloud, which is fantastic. And we're really excited to see, as we see the price of devices lower, one-to-one programs, BYOD or class sets actually become a reality for schools around the country. So I'm going to start off with some of the findings from the latest IDC study that focused on education and the impact of technology across Australia and New Zealand. And I wanted to highlight three key things here today. The first was enabling anywhere access, working and teaching. So this is quite similar to the mobility scenario you've heard across the enterprise area and across SMBs, but it's also quite similar to what Microsoft has been talking about for a while in terms of making sure that there's access to anywhere, anytime learning. So this means that education doesn't stop in the classroom, it actually follows the child home, it follows them to the playground, and it's something that we've wanted to see in traditional education for a long time, but it's certainly something that has become even more of a reality with technology. I actually wanted to have a quick anecdote here because I was at a school yesterday in Christchurch, and a good illustration of this kind of anywhere, anytime learning was this class had been given a project to work on together, and they'd taken it home as homework because they hadn't quite finished off what they wanted to in the class. And they came in kind of a little worried and nervous to talk to their teacher the next day, and it's because they'd used Skype to collaborate for homework that night, and they were really worried that they'd worked together and they'd use Skype, and they thought the teacher would be really angry with them. The teacher went, "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, this is fantastic," and so encourages it for all of his class projects. And he had a student who was over in Australia for a family get-together, and he was actually able to Skype into the class session and still get on with the project, so very cool. The second thing I wanted to highlight was creating a sector that operates like an enterprise. And this really drills into business efficiency and ensuring that schools have access to technology just like an enterprise would, that ensures that the school can operate as efficiently as possible. So we're seeing this come to light in terms of particularly Azure infrastructure. Recently, you might have seen an Educator, which is an education-specific part of Tech Day. Marlborough Boys was highlighted as a school who had moved most of their infrastructure to Azure, and they'd actually had $70,000 to $100,000 worth of savings that they'd actually been able to reinvest into devices for the school, which is pretty exciting, and just ensuring that those schools are operating just like any business would around the country. And if you think about it, schools really are some of the biggest businesses, even if they're not turning a profit. If you think about the number of students they look after, it can go anywhere from 50 right through to 3,000, 4,000 students, which is quite crazy. So really ensuring that you're applying, particularly as IT partners, applying the same things that you would in business right through to the school and the education sector. The final thing I wanted to highlight was personalised and blended learning. And this is really seeing a shift from the teacher's focus on a classroom down to the student level. So as we can drill down through analytics, which I'll touch on in a little bit, we can actually see the teacher focus their time less on sort of making sure that the class is performing well, but now that the student is performing well, and actually cater individually to a student. And that teacher I was speaking to yesterday in Christchurch, we were sort of asking him what the biggest outcome for technology was, and he said that it was the fact that he could actually spend time individually with his students rather than worrying about just the class performing. And that really comes into analytics. Power BI is now available for every single school around the country as part of the Office 365 free education SKU. And we're seeing teachers already play with it today, and then it goes right into Azure machine learning level, which I'll show you a little bit of a mock-up of when I go into the demo scenario, but really exciting. Now, can anybody tell me what you think these numbers might stand for? It's actually the BYOD numbers, so the percentage of schools or tertiaries that have some form of BYOD policy across tertiary and secondary. And it's pretty expected that tertiary would look very high. I was actually surprised it wasn't higher because we expect at a tertiary level, majority of institutions will have their students bring their own device. But at a school level, I was actually quite surprised that that number was that high because we hear a lot of feedback that schools aren't quite ready for a BYOD program, but that a classroom sort of set is more applicable for their one-to-one learning at that time, or 3-to-1. But really we see that BYOD policy come into play when we talk about anytime, anywhere learning, and it's certainly being adopted at much faster rates than I think we even thought within New Zealand, so it's really exciting. What's a little bit scary about those numbers is that out of that 68%, only 50% had some sort of security or management policy around their BYOD program. So, I mean, I'm seeing a few surprised faces. That's quite scary for us because obviously there are risks around sort of institution data that really need to be protected when you're putting in a BYOD program. And sort of as IT partners, I'll touch on it in a little bit, but it's really important to ensure that your school is really managing their BYOD policy in the best way that they can. So jumping straight into Windows 10, we're pretty excited about Windows 10 for education in particular. There are a couple of things. The first is the ability for a student to log straight in using their Azure AD details. So that's a big change from Windows 8, where you'd log in with a Microsoft or Windows Live account into your machine, if it was not domain joined, and then you would have to log into your school account. With Windows 10, you can log straight in with your Azure AD details, so huge difference. The second thing is native support for learning. And this is kind of about the native support for pen-based vocal interface, ensuring touch is supported, and of course a traditional keyboard. And this plays really into learning styles. And so I quite like the scenario of a social learner. So that's somebody who learns from interacting with others and learning with others. And we have a great scenario for that in Skype, Mystery Skype. So has anybody used Mystery Skype or have a school that uses Mystery Skype? No? Okay, well you all need to go and look for it as soon as you get out of the session. There are some amazing YouTube videos of schools in New Zealand mystery Skyping. Essentially the concept is you Skype with another classroom from across the country. Apparently Argentina or South America works quite well for our time zone, so there are a lot like that. And they have to, through a series of yes and no questions, or yes and no answers, find out where that school is from. So they're sort of all interacting across language barriers sometimes and across different countries. It's a very cool scenario and quite, almost quite emotional when you see how excited the kids get to be talking to somebody from the other side of the world. So the second thing that's great about Windows 10 is the breadth of devices. So Windows 10 runs, as you know, across a smartphone right through to your high-end device, like I'm using a Toshiba Z20T here. And that's really exciting in an education scenario because it means you can choose one operating system and you've got a breadth of devices that supports learners right through from primary or even pre-K, so early childhood, right up to their tertiary level learning needs. So we're seeing some amazing devices come through, like you've got the HP Stream here, fantastic low-cost device, and we're seeing this out of Opeki Primary. They're using it in their primary scenario, and they're running Minecraft on it. It's a fantastic low-cost entry-level device. Right through to something like the HP X360 or the Lenovo Yoga, which is sort of a little bit more ruggedized for education. So you can have one classroom and possibly a few options for a BYOD program that support what the parent wants to invest, and also what the learning scenario is for each child, because we know it's different, and we know that also shifts as they move along their learning journey. The other thing I've touched briefly on, and I've used it a little bit, is power of the pen. So we're seeing some amazing research come out around what pen means for education. We had Sharon Oviatt released a study a couple of years ago about digital learning interfaces. And she found that the learning interface that a child used when they were studying actually could either help, of course, their learning outcomes, but it could also actually actively hinder it, which is quite scary. So essentially how they discovered that was they set 3 sets of students in a lecture, and they asked them to write notes. The first group was told they were given a keyboard device, and they were told to just write their notes verbatim. The second group were given the same device and asked to think about their notes and write them down in their own words. And then finally, the third group was given a pen-based device, so they could do whatever they liked and actually write down their notes as they would on paper. And by far, the ones who had the digital pen had the greater learning outcomes, and the ones who were actually typing verbatim, they had incredibly low results, which you'd expect. The other thing is that if you kind of think about a pen scenario, even in your own sort of workplace, when you actually want to think or learn or brainstorm, you pick up your pen and you get a piece of paper or you're up on the whiteboard. So really allowing a student to have the same functionality through their device is quite powerful. And we're seeing that with OneNote, and I'll show you a little bit of that in action in the demo as well. And of course, for STEM subjects or for languages like Japanese, but being able to actually write in characters or writing symbols is really powerful in a pen. Now, I've stolen this slide from Jason Trump, who, did any of you get to the Partner Connect session earlier in the year? A few of you might have said, oh, great. Saw Jason Trump, and he presented a similar slide to this about the learning opportunities as a result of the device and the sort of incremental investment as you go up the scale. And I really like it because it ties in sort of what you've got in terms of learning outcomes from an entry-level device and how you, as you move up the scale, so you've got a touchscreen device, you're starting to bring in those visual learners who can get involved in touch. And as you move up even further, you get a pen-based device, so something like this Toshiba Z20T, which a lot of teachers use because they're on the Teller program, or anything, or sort of we're starting to see slightly lower cost devices come in as well. And if you think about the incremental difference in terms of that touchscreen with digitizer or a pen, that could resell at about $700, $800 now, versus the low-cost device which comes in at $400 or just under now. If you think about the investment for a parent every week, that might be a difference of a coffee, but actually in the learning outcomes for that student and the opportunities they've got from that device, that could be quite significant. So we kind of want to challenge the low-cost device defaults that New Zealand schools have really fallen into and ensure that parents, teachers, schools are actually thinking about what they're going to use the device for in the classroom and what's best for that student in that scenario. And of course, in terms of a low-cost device, of course a Chromebook is an option, but a Windows device now comes in at the same price point. For us, there's no reason a student should be limited to a Chromebook. The Windows low-cost device runs Chrome beautifully if you're using Google Apps for Education in the classroom, but it also runs a full copy of Office and it runs Minecraft. So if you're dealing with students at the moment in a BYOD scenario or even a one-to-one learning scenario, if you don't run Minecraft on their device, that might be a bit of an issue. So this is a slide that you probably wouldn't think you'd see at a Microsoft presentation or an Ingram micro presentation that's focused on devices. But what the OECD study was saying here was actually that the type of device matters, that the technology in the classroom is amazing, but unless you teach those teachers and you integrate it into the pedagogy, it's not going to have an impact. So we recognise that one, that might not be at the core of your business's IT solution providers. It also is probably not going to be at the core of a school. So we've got teacher ambassadors that are hired by Microsoft. They're on the road all the time, and they're able to deliver free professional development sessions on Microsoft technologies to your schools. So please take advantage of them. Their details are up here, but feel free to email me directly and I'll put you in touch. Up and down the country, this essentially, if you're putting in a great IT infrastructure and solutions, you've got OneNote in the classroom and Office 365, if the teacher doesn't know how to use it, it won't get used and it won't actually help the students to learn with technology. So microsoft.co.nz/education seminars, and it's all free, which is really nice. So I'm going to jump straight into deployment and provisioning of Windows 10. So there are a couple of exciting things for schools in this scenario as well. Wipe and reload is perfectly acceptable as a solution for schools and for Windows 10. The in-place upgrade, how many of you have upgraded to Windows 10? Hopefully everybody puts up their hand, because if you've been through that process, it's very easy, simple. I did it all the time because I was on the developer preview. It was almost every day at one point, and it's a really simple, easy process to go through. All schools who are covered by the Ministry of Education agreement, so that's all state and integrated schools, or schools that have software assurance on their volume licensing agreement, are eligible for Windows 10 upgrades. And of course, if you've got a BYOD program, all of those students will be upgraded by their sort of home use license. So we're seeing some schools fully adopt Windows 10 and have rolled it out already. So hoping that in the back to school season in February, that we'll have full Windows 10 schooling sector. So the final piece is provisioning, and that's new for Windows 10. And there are two pieces that are important here for schools. The first is that enrolling a device, so you can go straight through from Azure Active Directory. There's no need to have multiple accounts, which is a really nice scenario for a student. And the second is flexible provisioning. And this could be applied in a schooling scenario, but is also quite useful in a tertiary level scenario where you've got teachers who are traveling or for a teach-your-own device. So the kind of example that I like to use here is a teacher who's gone to a seminar in Singapore, and they're over there for a conference, and they left their laptop in a taxi. So not great, because it's got student data on it, and of course they've got this conference to go to. So never fear, IT uses Intune, so they can wipe the device nice and easy. And then the teacher can actually go straight into a retail store, purchase a Windows 10 Pro device. When she logs in, it'll ask her whether it's an organisation-owned device or a personal device. She'll say it's owned by the organisation and log in with her credentials. And straight away, it will provision over the hotel Wi-Fi the latest image that was on the laptop that was left in the taxi. So if you think about what that teacher would have had to do in the past, that's quite a nice scenario. You know, they possibly would have missed the conference if they had to fly back and get a new device, or IT possibly had to ship one up after they'd sort of wipe and reload and imaged it. So that's a really nice scenario for school-owned devices or for teacher-owned devices. I also quickly wanted to touch on the Windows Store. So there are a couple of things in here that make a big difference for education. The first, again, is the access with Azure Active Directory, so it's the one sign-in, there's no need to have multiple accounts. The second is volume licensing and flexible distribution. So volume licensing means that they can now raise a purchase order to the Windows Store, which is really nice for a school. No longer do they have to use a credit card, although they can totally do that if they like. And then flexible distribution, the easiest way to explain this is probably through an example again. So if you've got a Year 11 classroom, they're doing a music lesson, and they use a specific app every year for that Year 11 music class. What you can do is purchase a set of licenses for that many students, push it down at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year when you've got a new group of Year 11 students, you can pull it back from those existing ones and push it down to the new group, which is really nice. There's also the curated education app store, and this is similar to the business store portal if you've covered this sort of through your business scenarios. It's probably more applicable to a tertiary level institution. For a secondary, intermediate, primary, I think probably the license reclaim reuse and volume licensing is a bit more of a manageable, and it works really nicely anyway. So finally, I wanted to touch on management choices, because we saw that 50% of 68% don't have any sort of policies. So obviously, group policy in SCCM is still a valid option, but we're also seeing schools actually move into mobile device management. And we obviously like to see that with Intune. So Intune is great because it's cross-platform, so you've got Mac, iOS, Android, and Windows covered in that. It's cloud-based, so you can manage it off-site, and then the school only gets to know when there's an issue. And the other piece is that there's the Intune student use benefit. So any student, any school throughout the country, if they license for their full-time equivalent staff, then all of the students are covered, and it's licensed on a per user rather than a per device basis as well, which is quite nice in a schooling scenario. Cool, so I wanted to quickly start off with Delve. So I initially mentioned that there was no reason that schools shouldn't benefit from the enterprise solutions that we use in business. And this sort of starts at a really nice, easy level at Delve. So Delve is a part of Office 365 that allows you to search the database of your Office 365 kind of tenant, of course, for only the pieces that you have permission to view. So I use this at work all the time, But I've got Evan Bauman, so Mr. Bauman, he's a Year 9 science teacher here, and he's just searched for history within his delve, and you can see that a whole lot of people and all of their work has come up. But what he's actually wanting to do is figure out what's happening in the history department, hence he searched history, so he can see whether there's a little bit of an opportunity to do a group project across a couple of classrooms. So he's going to focus on physics and possibly history. And you can see that Carl has actually done a project here, and he can open it straight up, he can view what Carl's done, and then possibly flick Carl an email directly from within Office 365. I've seen that you're planning a project on Roman history, and I want to see what we can do in collaboration. The other piece that is often used in enterprise that we haven't really thought about it too much in school yet is Yammer. And this provides very exciting opportunities for education. So of course you've got your overall group where you could have possibly school notices, then you've got each individual class, where again you could have Mr. Bauman has popped up a video that he'd like his class to watch before tomorrow's lesson. The other piece that is really nice about this is the external networks. So are any of you, hopefully most of you, are part of the NZ Partner Yammer network? So that's, yeah, great. That's an external network to the Microsoft network. And in the same way, you could have an external network to your school's network. So, for example, possibly the parents from Science Year 9B. And that provides an outlet for the extended learning community to be able to share sort of projects, school notices, etc. And is a really nice, easy way of schools communicating out to their wider community. So I also wanted to show you quickly OneNote Class Notebook Creator. And how many people have used OneNote with their schools or are using OneNote in school at the moment? Cool, great. So the OneNote Class Notebook Creator has been put together by the education team for OneNote. So we've got now kind of with the commitment of Microsoft to education, there's an education engineer in every product team. But OneNote has gone one step further and they've got an education OneNote product team, which is very exciting, and we're really seeing the fruits of that come out. I was talking to some of those teachers yesterday and they were saying we're actually seeing our feedback get turned around within a few weeks and integrated into the product, which is really cool. This is the opening screen, so you get there straight from your Office 365 education tenant, and you just click to create a class notebook, and it honestly takes about 30 seconds. Add your students in. You can either do this through Office 365 groups or through a CSV file if you want to be a little bit old-fashioned. Add a couple teachers, add a description in, and it will spin it up. So there are three major spaces in the OneNote class notebook. There's the collaboration space, and this is where teachers and students all have access to edit. So you can see here, Mr. Bauman has put up the TUI as a bit of a conversation starter for the beginning of the lesson. So he wants to find out about what his students know about the TUI before they start the lesson and about native birds in general. And all of his students can, live time, go through and annotate. If they've got a pen-based device, they can type in something if they've got a keyboard. And Mr. Bauman can actually project this up onto the screen, so straight onto the whiteboard. If they've got a smartboard installed, you can finally use it by projecting OneNote up onto it. And everybody is sort of collaborating in real time, which is really exciting. The next space is the content library, and this is where just the teacher can edit, but the students can all access it. So this is where you put your unit plan, maybe a lesson plan or a marking rubric, and students can copy this information out, but they can't edit what's in here. The final piece are the students' notebooks, and you can see here Carl and Sarah both have notebooks, and obviously if you've got a class, this will be much longer. And this is where the teacher can view the work, but the student also has work in there and can view that and edit it. But none of the other students can see their notebook, which is really nice. So essentially, the digital notebook for each student. And you can see here that Sarah has completed some maths homework, dropped straight into OneNote, the little PDF, and completed it with full working because she's got access to a pen-based tablet, which is really exciting. And Mr. Bauman has actually been able to go through, as you would on paper, and mark what's right and what's wrong. What's also nice about this is you can see that I've dropped in a couple of voice recordings. but it's as simple as saying, let's record some audio, and you can start recording some feedback for Sarah. So Mr. Bauman in real time can record feedback saying, actually, number 8 wasn't so good, you got your 5s and 6s mixed around, but I think you're fine, I'll allocate you an extra activity and I've dropped it into your notebook. So if you can complete that before tomorrow, that would be great. Stop, real-time recording straight into the OneNote, which is very cool. And if you think about that third IDC industry trend of personalised and blended learning, all of a sudden you've gone from being able to give some feedback really fast, a couple of sentences if you're lucky because you've got an extra time when you're marking, right through to taking no extra time to actually voice record a bit of extra feedback for each individual student. So that's really powerful. The final thing I wanted to show you was the analytics piece, and this is a kind of mock-up that Corp have put together of what is possible with Azure Machine Learning. So we've got Sherman Elementary here, log in straight with Office 365, and we've got Mrs. Smith's dashboard. So again, this is a mock-up. It's absolutely possible with current technology, but nobody sells it at the moment. And we can see that Mrs. Smith has got her notes. She can also see how far through she is in her academic year and how that's broken down. And she's got some important dates and Cortana there, so she can probably ask Cortana what she's got to do today, and Cortana will let her know. If she's going straight into her numbers and operations, this is her fractions class. And she can see her 6 students here, and I wish class size was 6 around the world. Wouldn't that be nice? But you can see they've each got bars underneath them. So John and Selena don't look too good. They're a bit red. Manisha and Griffin are very green, and Daphne and Tom are kind of average. So she can actually drill into each of those students. So we've clicked on Manisha, she's doing really well. We can see where she's doing well as well. So clearly her fractions performance is absolutely outstanding. And what Mrs. Smith can do is go in and assign activities that are best to kind of extend Manisha's learning throughout the class, even when the average level of the class is going to be working at a different level to what Manisha is. So that's, again, that personalised learning straight to Manisha to ensure that she's maximising her class time as well. And of course, Mrs. Smith can do the same for Selena, who isn't doing so well. She can assign her a little bit of extra work to ensure that she gets up to speed so she's performing at least an average level as well. So that's a very cool scenario and something that we think IT partners can begin to develop for their education customers now. And even with sort of a limited portfolio in Power BI, this can actually be a reality. If you think about Power BI, has anybody played that? It's essentially data analytics, yeah. So you can pull in from a couple of different data sources some data. So you might have your class maybe NCA results, so you can keep track of how many students have actually got all of their credits for the year, and you could set that up with a tracker for each student. And that means that each teacher can just take a quick glance at their Power BI dashboard and be able to see where their students are performing and which ones they need to go and spend a little extra time on. So I'm going to quickly jump back to my presentation and talk about partner resources. Cool. So we've put together with Ingram Micro a few things that should really help you head back into the school year to really act as the best trusted advisor for your schools, or if you're a school, give you the sort of the tools to go back to the school year and actually figure out how to best apply technology in your classroom. So here, just to highlight a couple of them, school device checklist. So this is really to help teachers, parents, schools as a whole, kind of demystify the device choice. So of course you're there to help them as well, but this focuses on what's important to look for in an education device. The other pieces are if you've got a state or integrated school or a school that's got volume licensing for Office 365 or Office on the desktop, or an Pro Plus add-on into their Office 365 subscription, they are eligible for free Office for their for their teachers and students as sort of a benefit from Microsoft. So it's called the Pro Plus Student and Teacher Benefit. And so that means they can download it onto their personal devices, and we really want to make sure that every student and teacher across the country is taking advantage of this, because it's it's a huge benefit to their learning and their skills as they move into the workforce. So we've put a bit of marketing material, one for teachers to send to their learning community, the parents, and to their students, but also for you to help get the word out as well. And then finally, we've got a Microsoft booklet that will be out sort of within the next week or so, I believe. I can't see Rachel from Ingram here, but she will be getting in contact and sending one of those out and getting your feedback on whether you'd like one for your schools as well. But essentially, it kind of demystifies that whole technology choice when you're talking about Microsoft. We know there's so much out there, and we've really tried to apply it to learning outcomes and what you can actually use the technology for in the classroom. So we hope you really find that as a valuable resource. So there are 3 things I'd like you to do at the end of today, if I can ask a little bit from you. The first is to sign up for the Microsoft Education Partner Network, and I haven't mentioned this at all, but how many of you are signed up as authorised education partners or resellers? Cool? Cool, awesome. So you might have seen the shift from reseller to partner, so it's no longer the AER network, it's the AEP network. And this is as part of kind of a renewed investment in the education partner network from our corporate team. And no longer sort of, they've renamed to encompass everybody, which is really nice. Even the ones who don't necessarily sell a huge amount of academic licensing, like is the case in New Zealand. But also it incorporates a whole lot of tutorials, webinars, a whole lot more go-to-market resources, which we're seeing come through now and will only increase as the year 2016 begins. So really encourage you to sign up and take advantage of the resources there. Finally, the Yammer network. So if you're not a part of it, really encourage you to become a part of it. This is our main comms channel out to the partner community, and it also is a great way to get resources up there. So anything cool I find, anything useful, I pop it straight up on the partner network. So definitely make sure you're part of that. And finally, resources. So I've spoken about a whole lot of partner resources there, and you're probably thinking, how do I get my hands on those? If you fill out the survey, or you pop me an email with your details, or give me a business card, we'll send those out to you at the end of the session, along with the deck that I presented today. But if you fill out the survey, you'll go in the draw to win a Surface Pro 3, courtesy of Ingram Micro. So you can either do it online, there's a QR code up there, aka.ms/edusurvey, or there are sort of paper copies in a very old-fashioned manner all over the seats. So really keen to hear your feedback on today's session, so we can make the next one even better, and also keen to make sure that you get your hands on all of those resources as well.